Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Syed FAROOQ Hasan with a new episode of Sky is the Limit. I often talk about our Pakistani women who have brought a lot of laurels for Pakistan. Whether it be the field of sports, whether it be the field of medicine, adventure sports, science, so many fields, and I feel so proud. I have done a little bit on my part via this program Sky is the Limit to showcase a few talented individuals, especially Pakistani females, Pakistani women who have brought laurels for our country. But today the individual that I'm going to introduce to you, I'm sure you know her already, is someone who's known very well internationally. She is the first Pakistani astronaut, the first Pakistani to have gone in space. She's been to North Pole, she's been to South Pole, she's done skydiving from Mount Everest, which is the tallest mountain. What to talk about, you know, so many achievements. And if I talk about awards, well, let me just mention that she is Tamgha Imtiaz, Presidential Medal of Distinction, and besides that she is also in the Power 100 Trailblazer Award, which is Pakistan Power 100 in London. She got this in September 2013, and an amazing, inspiring personality. Today she is in Pakistan, in Islamabad, and I happen to get the opportunity to meet her. Let me introduce Namira Salim to you. Assalamu alaikum, Namira.
Walaikum salam. Thank you for the invitation.
Pleasure. It's such a pleasure. You know, I've really been looking forward, and my good luck that you're here, and I got you for this program and you agreed to the interview.
Thank you.
Namira, so this program Sky is the Limit basically is about all the unsung heroes of Pakistan, all the top achievers of Pakistan, people who have made Pakistan shine brighter on the world map, and you are one such person, being the first Pakistani astronaut. You know, we've grown up watching movies of space and science and technology, and now here I'm sitting with this one individual who's been into space actually. So I'm going to ask all the basic questions from you. How does it feel to be in space? How was the weather in North Pole, South Pole? How did it feel when you dived from Mount Everest? But before that, let me start with the basics. Where were you born?
Well, before I start, I would say that sky is not the limit.
Okay, that's a good. Yes, we've had a few individuals who've mentioned that sky is not the limit. You know, there are other borders that you have to go to.
Sure, I just crossed it.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, where were you born?
Karachi.
Karachi. And tell us something about your early childhood. How many siblings? Which school did you go to? And you know, what was your favorite subject? I'm sure it was not science.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, actually, I went to all kinds of schools because my father was in the army. So we traveled all over Pakistan. Schools at times were not the best, especially the primary schooling. It was pretty basic, public schools. But eventually, I was from 7th until my 10th grade in Karachi. There was a school called Defense Authority Model School in Phase 4. And it was a good school. That's where I went in the end. And then I went to Commerce College and I got my intermediate from there. After that, I moved to Dubai, where my parents were already settled. And I joined them, and I did the first year of my college there, my university, the freshman year, in the very first university that was set up in the UAE in Ajman, English-speaking university.
Okay.
So I was the pioneering batch for that.
Okay.
And after that, I moved to the US.
Okay.
Partly with the family.
And then there was no looking back, of course.
Yes.
How many siblings?
I have 2 younger brothers.
2 younger brothers. And like, are they also in the same?
No.
No, they're not. No. Okay, so they're doing something different, totally different.
They're totally on Earth. Yeah.
Totally on Earth. Yeah, you can say that,
Yeah.
literally. When you were growing up, initial days, who was the inspiration in your life, or who was the main guiding factor?
I think, number one, I was born with I was very idealistic, and I still am. So I was born with this streak of idealism, and I was always known as the dreamer and somebody who lived in a dream world. So because of that, you know, I had very different goals for myself. And I always say that I was born with the dream of going to space. I used to say as a child that I want to go to space. I belong in the stars. Like, I felt this very spiritual pull to the night sky.
That was without watching any movies or any inspiration,
I
just
don't
like
even
that.
watch movies.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not into it that much. I had my own imagination that I followed. And then as a teenager, somehow I just told everyone very confidently that I would grow up to become an astronaut. And I was really serious about it. And I knew that, you know, not being an American citizen, I could not go to space because, you know, I can't be a NASA astronaut. Because at that time, that was the only way you could go to space. So I had no idea how I would do it, but I was so sure that I would do it. That I just said it.
So you got to dream big. That's lesson number one. Okay.
No, actually what I say is that it's not necessary that you dream big, but it's important to have dreams.
It's important, okay, fine, fair enough. Your initial school days, were you like a dreamer, a thinker kind of a student, or were you the naughty one? Were you very good in your studies, the teacher's pet, or were you the rebel, the, you know, like the different one?
I was definitely the different one, and I think some of the most successful stories in this world are about people who are dropouts. So no, I was not a dropout, but I was not at all a bookish or an intellectual person.
Okay.
In the sense of being a bookworm. I was totally rebellious. In fact, I didn't like studying. And at times, yes, I was naughty because I'm somebody who laughs and cries very easily. So a lot of times in class, I would just giggle and laugh for no reason with my friends and get into trouble. So that happened a few times. But yeah, I don't think that I enjoyed my school days.
So you were not in the top 3 or top 5. You were an average student.
Average student, totally. In fact, yesterday I was talking to a friend from my secondary school in Lahore, and we were just discussing how we were very average students.
Okay. Did you have any favorite subject in your school days, like arts or you know, social studies or geography or maths, for that matter?
I did well in maths because I find math very logical, you know. But my favorite subject was always art. So what people don't know about me is that I'm deep down an artist and I'm very poetic. I learned Urdu through ghazals, which I listened to very passionately all my life. And I love the poetic expression. So in primary school, I ended up, you know, joining a class of sculpture. And I discovered that I loved sculpting, and I was very good at it naturally. Like I won the first prize in school, like school-wide prize in sculpture, the first prize, because I made a, you know, bust of a woman, and I won that prize. And then when I was very young, in Quetta, I think, maybe very, very early days of primary schooling, a teacher of mine wrote in my report card that I was a born artist.
Born artist. And you believe that obviously, because you didn't get any training or any inspiration from,
I have natural talents, like creative talents.
Awesome, awesome. So, you know, as a child, when you go to any school, you get affiliated, right? You make friends there, you like the building, the premises, the teachers, and it's very difficult to let go. You know, that was one of my biggest fears when I was in school. So I spent straight 11 years in one school. I did O-levels and passed out. But usually people, students who change schools, you know, they have a problem in adjusting to a new school. Now you said you've been moving around, so I'm sure after every 2-3 years you would have achieved. That would mean that you've traveled all over Pakistan, different cultures, different schools, different teachers, different friends. Was that upsetting, or was that disruptive to your lifestyle?
No, I've always traveled a lot. I was used to it because, again, initially because my father was in the army, and then we moved to Lahore, to Dubai, and briefly, and then for my undergraduate studies, you know, my father moved my mother and my brothers with me to Long Island, New York, so I could get my undergraduate degree. And then after that, 2 years later, I went to my university at Columbia, which is in New York City.
Most rated university.
Gee, it's an Ivy League. So even over there, my mother stayed with me one semester because she was afraid, you know, there's this stereotype for people who live in Long Island that, you know, New York is not safe,
Yeah.
the city. So she lived with me for a semester, and we even took a lot of courses together, and she was very comfortable because Columbia has a beautiful campus.
Okay.
And it's very calm. It's in upstate, you know, uptown New York, the west side. So it's in uptown New York, west side.
Okay. And does your mother have an academic background also? Or like, was she a teacher or?
She passed away, but she did teach at times, you know, in schools where we were studying during the army days. And she herself was like a head girl of St. Joseph's College, and you know, she was in Karachi, St. Joseph's.
Okay.
Then home economics, and my grandmother was a very accomplished woman.
Okay.
She got the Queen's Coronation Medal in 1953.
Wow.
My maternal grandparents were doctors, and you know, they created all the initial institutions and universities and schools and
Wow.
you know, associations in Pakistan. They were
Wow.
the founding individuals. My grandmother worked with Lady Fatima Jinnah and you know, all of that. So
Wow, awesome.
yes.
So your mother, you never felt the pressure from your mother to, you know, you have to be in the top 3 or you have to really excel in your studies and, you know, that's good for your future and all. You know, usually that's the way we all brought up.
My mother was not at all that type. I think she was more like into curbing me a bit and, you know, bringing me down to earth and ensuring that I wouldn't get too confident or independent. My father was the other way around. He gave me the confidence. He made me travel all over. And I became very confident, very independent.
Okay.
To the extent that one day I decided to go to the Bahamas and do scuba diving.
Okay.
So I just called my father and I told him that, you know, I'm going to go scuba diving in the Bahamas. And talking of not being very studious, that was during the time I was at Columbia University.
Okay.
And in fact, I had my midterm exams in economics coming up. And I had a choice to either do like my midterm and final for economics, which was not really something I was passionate about, or just do the finals. So I went to my, you know, teacher and I told him that I don't want to take the midterm. I'll just risk it because I love taking risks. And I said, I'll just do the final. He's like, you sure you want to put all your eggs in one basket? I said, yes, because I was actually doing pool lessons for scuba diving during my times at Columbia. And I was also sculpting. So studies was the last thing I did, even at Columbia. I did whatever I loved doing. And they were all fun things that I did.
And you learned via that?
Yes, yes, I did. I mean, so I went to the Bahamas for scuba diving and my father was so shocked. He's like, you know, you are just like, we can't even like pin you down anymore because now you are just too independent. You know, I have not seen that part of the world, and you're going to a part of the world that is so unknown to the entire family. In the Bahamas, you're going for open water scuba diving, which means you're going to dive in the sea on your own. There'll be no family members with you. And I was also a student pilot at that time. So I was, you know, flying planes. And even that I informed my father after having the first flight with my instructor that, oh, by the way, I flew a plane in the morning.
Like one of those normal things. Today I had this for lunch.
So I did give my parents quite a bit of
shocks. No, but I'm sure this is the confidence that they instilled in you. You know, they believed in you, and that's why you are where you are. So during school days, were you good in any extracurricular like sports, any football or cricket? No, you were never interested in sports? No. That was a no-no. Any game you've ever played? Table tennis, badminton?
I did some karate.
Karate, okay. Hard sports. Okay, all right. So when you believed in going to become an astronaut, did you focus your mind towards getting the right kind of training and education to reach that goal? Like when you were in school, when you passed your higher secondary school and then your matriculation or O-levels, after that you went to college. So did you plan that, okay, now because I have to become an astronaut, so I have to have science, physics? Was there any planning, or it was
that
just
happened.
like by fate? That happened?
No, that did happen. And it happened when I was in metric.
Okay.
So in metric, I had to choose science or arts, and I chose science.
Okay.
Up to that point, I was fine. But then, when it came to, you know, my intermediate, I had to pick science again to be able to become an astronaut. And that was a concern I had. So what I did was, my father actually was tough, and he said, no, you have to go into business studies, because he was a businessman in the
He
end.
wanted
He
it,
said,
okay.
if you want to be successful in life, you have to do business. So either you listen to me or you go your own way. So I said, okay, you know, I was still young, so I would sometimes listen, mostly listen to them. So I joined Commerce College for my intermediate, but I used to wear the uniform of St. Joseph's. And in Commerce College, we had to wear this, you know, chadar on top.
Okay.
So I used to hide the monogram of St. Joseph's in my chadar,
Okay.
with the hope that I will transfer to St. Joseph's and do FSC, so that I could go to space and I could become an astronaut.
So another belief you had that
Yes.
you're going to go to St. Joseph's. Okay.
And one day what I did was I actually bunked my college and I joined my friends in St. Joseph's in their classroom. And I pretended to be from St. Joseph's.
Because you're wearing that uniform, okay.
And the teachers actually asked me some questions, and I wasn't even from that class. So it was funny. We had a lot of fun that day.
One of those incidents, yeah, we have in college, all of us. So, okay, you went to Commerce College. How about physics coming in? Because I believe physics is one of the mandatory subjects that you need to do to be in where you are.
Calculus, physics.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
Exactly.
So I didn't give up, even though I did my intermediate in commerce. After that, I moved to Dubai I joined my parents there.
Yeah.
Because in those days, there were no English-speaking universities in Dubai or in the UAE for beyond matriculation. So over there, I found an astronomer who was like the father of astronomy in the UAE, a South African. And, you know, I told him I want to go to space and I have not studied science. So, you know, he started tutoring me and mentoring me, and he used to send me all these books and things, you know, about calculus, astrophysics, not astrophysics, physics, science. And, you know, it really bored me. And I was like, this is not my thing.
This is not what I want to do.
No. And then I started, you know, I joined one of the groups that he was heading. It was called the Natural History Museum. And, you know, they used to also go for like stargazing evenings. So I'd already bought a telescope for my 14th birthday. And then I would go and stargaze. And, you know, I took to the beauty of the night sky and the creative side of what inspired me from, you know, how the stars inspired me. So I just took the stars and the night sky as my inspiration. And, you know, I used to create things around astronomy and space themes. I even made a rocket after I graduated from Columbia with my postgraduate.
Okay.
Because partly I was sculpting, even at Columbia, even at Hofstra for my undergrad. And I was always invited by my art and sculpture teachers, all the way from secondary school to post-graduation, to work in their home studios, because they really believed in my creative talents.
Okay.
So at Columbia University, the second year of my master's, which was the final year, I created a flying machine, which was my rocket. And that was in 1996. And I said, you know, that I'm going to go to space next. And this is my rocket.
Wow.
And 10 years later, in 2006,
you actually made it happen.
I signed the contract with Virgin Galactic, Richard Branson's company. And because it was the birth of the private space industry, commercialization of space, space tourism, so I was able to buy a ticket with the help of my parents, of course, exactly 10 years later. And exactly 10 years later, like a few months later in 2006, the government of Pakistan, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, invited me to Pakistan, and they introduced me to a nation of over, at that time, 200 million people as the first Pakistani astronaut.
Oh, okay. Great, great. So, tell me one thing. When you say you bought a ticket for this, you know, adventure, can you just explain for the benefit of the viewers that it's not as easy as getting a plane ticket from Islamabad to Karachi, flying any, you know, commercial airliner, you know, to get a ticket on this very, you know, plane or this very aircraft, spacecraft, you have to be someone, you know, trained and very special. Is that different? Can you just explain that?
Well, it will become like flying on Earth
Eventually.
Because this is commercialization of space. So, you know, with time, the prices will come down and we will be able to take flights into space more frequently. So recently, Virgin Galactic has had like a flight every month. Previously, the other space line was doing flights 3 times or 4 times in a year. So in the future, Virgin Galactic after 2026 is planning to do 2 flights a week
2 flights
So-
a week
Yes.
into space.
Yes. So with time, but they need a new fleet for that, which they are working on. It's called the Delta fleet. So eventually, the point is that with time, the price of these commercial space flights will come down, and one will be able to go to space more frequently, and come back as more of a regular aviation activity, like we fly around the planet.
So how long is this flight? I'm sure that there are no hotels or resorts there in space that you can go and spend 3 days and then come back. There's no concept of time for that matter there. So how long does it take?
Well, this is a suborbital flight. It's not an orbital flight, which means that we don't go around the Earth's orbit. So we go up like that. It's called a suborbital arc. We stay in zero gravity after breaking the orbit for 3 minutes, and then we come down.
Okay.
So going up takes about 45 minutes with Virgin Galactic, which is the longest flight. Altogether, it's 1 hour. Is because the mothership actually carries the spaceship up to 50,000 feet.
Yeah.
And then it releases it from 50,000 feet, and it ignites as a rocket, the spaceship, and goes into space in 1 minute, breaking the sound barrier and at 3 Mach. So that it took us 1 minute to go to space, and then we were in zero gravity for 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
And then we came down in 15 minutes back to Earth. We glided down very softly, into the atmosphere.
Okay. So 1 hour, 10 minutes.
It's supposed to be 1 hour, 10 minutes or 1 hour, but our flight was just under an hour, and we spent 3 minutes in zero gravity.
Wow, and you created history.
Yes.
What an amazing feeling.
I became, the thing that makes me really proud is that 17 years ago, this very ministry where I'm sitting right next door to us, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, introduced me in Islamabad as the first Pakistani astronaut.
Yeah.
Now that's 17 years ago. And last month I went to space as the first Pakistani astronaut.
Yeah.
And I've come into this interview from the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, which had a press conference with me just now. And we had media, global media, we
Covering
had
that
so
event.
many journalists, and it was all covered.
Yeah.
And today I am the first Pakistani astronaut. In these 17 years, nobody broke my record. So I set the record. I maintained it for 17 years. And that really makes me proud. Yeah.
Amazing. I'm sure after watching this program, you would be inspiring a lot of young Pakistani girls who would be watching you right now. And I'm sure in time there'll be a lot more astronauts from Pakistan.
Actually, on that note, yesterday I was in Lahore and I was amazed. I met with a couple of schools and school teachers, and they told me how my story is so well known to children in Pakistan. I mean, they've done like projects about explorers, and they chose me. It really touches my heart.
Yeah.
And I met yesterday, like a school, and there were students from all the grades that you can imagine, primary to secondary, and they were so intelligent and so well informed. They were STEM education students, you know, like science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and they asked me all the right questions. They were very intelligent, totally like well informed, and because I've spent 17 years in this industry, I was, thank God, able to answer all the questions pretty smoothly. So I was so inspired by these children.
You could see the sparkle in their eyes.
Yes, and amazing questions. And I told them, I said, you are the ones who inspire me. When I see that my story is impacting all of you, to follow a dream, to follow your star, it inspires me. That's the only reward I get.
No, and Pakistan is so proud of you, Namira. Now, you've been given already awarded Tamgha Imtiaz by the government of Pakistan.
Yes.
I already mentioned that. So, Namira, just getting back to your academic profile, when you moved to Dubai, that was a different culture, a different environment, different country for that matter. You moved out of Pakistan for your bachelor's, right?
Yes, but I had been like on and off in Dubai,
traveling,
like back and forth. We even stayed there when I was in 8th grade for a year.
Okay.
So it was like kind of.
It wasn't a new culture or new nothing.
No.
Okay. And from there, when you went for your master's to Columbia, right? I'm sure you would have.
No, first I went from Dubai to do my bachelor's.
Yeah. Okay.
From Hofstra University, I did a BBA.
Okay, and you scored well in that, and then you got admitted.
Well, at Columbia, I did not get in as a conventional student, so I did apply to a lot of Ivy Leagues.
Okay.
After my bachelor's, but I did not work for anyone.
Okay.
In terms of the traditional work experience. So for MBA programs, that was very important.
Okay.
That you have like traditional work
experience. Yeah.
I did not have conventional work experience, but after Hofstra, I set up the largest student-run organization of the world in Pakistan. I brought it to Pakistan, and today it's in all major institutes. It's called ISEC. It's a French acronym. It stands for the International Association of Students in Business and Economics.
Okay.
So I was the founding president of ISEC in Pakistan, and that took me 2 years. I had a lot of experience because, you know, I dealt with all the top multinationals of Pakistan, and I introduced ISEC to them. And what happens in ISEC is that you have a traineeship program. It's a reciprocal exchange program. So as many Pakistanis went out to work in multinationals abroad, that many came from outside of Pakistan and worked in our multinationals.
Like an exchange program.
Yes, and they learn to, you know, appreciate cultures and promote international understanding and cooperation through ISEC traineeships.
Okay.
And I did that in Pakistan, and then in fact there was even an ISEC marriage in Pakistan.
Oh, okay.
Between a French ISECer who was working here and a Pakistani ISECer.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. So one thing that when I was going through your profile, what I've noticed, Namira, that you know you've spent considerable time in Pakistan, of course, and we take pride in you being a Pakistani. You've been in Monaco, in France also. You spent some time there, in Dubai, and in States. Where do you spend like most of your time? Like you keep on shuttling between these 4 places, or what?
Well, it's now really between Dubai and Monaco, and occasionally to Pakistan.
Okay.
But recently I came like 2 weeks before my flight.
Okay.
And I was handed over the flag officially. So I very proudly carried the flag with me, and I think a very important part of my mission was to take the Pakistani flag with me. I wore it on my sleeve, patch on the right side, because officially I was representing only Pakistan as a Pakistani national. And what I want to clarify to your audience is that I am a pure Pakistani.
Yep.
I was born in Pakistan, I was raised here. I do not have any other passport, because a lot of people say that, oh, she's done this because she's an American national or whatever, you know, like nationality, and she doesn't live in Pakistan, she's not from Pakistan. No, I'm very much Pakistani, and I'm really proud of that.
Right, and which really brings me to my next question. Did you have any problems, flying, going into space, carrying a Pakistani passport or a nationality? Like, I believe, there are certain nationalities which could get preference in this field.
Well, actually, Virgin Galactic is a very global company. So when I signed up with them, they know that my condition.
They knew that, okay.
Buying the ticket was that there'll be no other Pakistani. I would be the first Pakistani to buy a ticket, because I was the first Pakistani to approach them. So in the Founder Astronaut Club, which was like the first 100 people who bought the tickets, there was no other Pakistani. There was nobody else from Monaco, whether resident or national. Same thing for Pakistan. Dubai, no other founder. I was the first founder.
Okay.
So Richard Branson, in fact, introduced Virgin Galactic with me in Dubai, and there was a global press launch. That's how I became known in Pakistan, and I was introduced by the ministry here. And he actually raised the biggest stakeholder in this company, worth $380 million, showing my face as the example of early consumer confidence in space tourism.
Wow.
Yes.
That's big deal.
So Virgin did not have, they were fine flying a Pakistani.
Okay.
But things have changed over the last 17 years, and there were a lot of challenges.
Yes.
So going to space as a Pakistani, there was some issues. Not from the US or the government. There was just one individual who made life hell for me.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Would you want to talk about that?
Not yet,
okay.
But when the time is right.
When the time is right. So I'm going to talk about the challenges when we come back after the break. Before we go on the break, how much was the ticket for? Just a question.
In 2006, it was $200,000, $2 lakh.
$200,000.
$2 lakh.
$2 lakh.
And now it is $450,000, so $4.5 lakh.
So it is an expensive deal. Yeah, it's not.
It's still the cheapest deal in space tourism.
In space tourism.
Yes, there are more expensive tickets with other companies.
Okay. So $450,000 it costs today to fly into space. But we've got a lot of interesting questions lined up for Namira. One and only Namira, whom we've gotten hold of, and we're not going to let her go before she answers all those questions. How does it feel to be in the space, in space? Like, is it the same feeling as we see in the movies, you know, that light flying object? How was it skydiving from Mount Everest? How cold was it at the North Pole and the South Pole when she landed there? Lot of such questions. Very, very interesting conversation. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after show. Welcome back to Sky's the Limit. This is FAROOQ Hassan and I am in conversation with the one and only Namira Salim, the first Pakistani astronaut. Namira, what were the major challenges that you faced during this space expedition while moving up to it and during that expedition? Would you like to mention those?
Well, the expedition was 17 years long if I go from the beginning until the end.
Yeah.
But the final expedition was about a week, so less than a week.
Okay.
So I can say that it took a long time for this to happen, but I don't see it as a negative thing. The media always made a big deal out of it that, you know, it's not happening, when will it happen? Because I was able to learn a lot in the process about the space industry, where it was evolving, in the commercialization, and I set up a non-profit in the process. So I did a lot of work. I was very busy.
Okay.
Time flew. But when it came to going to space and going to the spaceport, staying there for about 5 days and going to for the flight, you know, the people have changed, the culture has changed in the company. That was a bit painful. I missed the people that I spent over 15 years with in this journey. So obviously the attitudes were different. Okay. And that was not very nice.
And do you need to do some kind of special training, like physically, is it enduring or is it like tiring? When moving up to the D-Day, you know, like, do you have to train yourself?
Yeah, but the training is not that hard because this is a suborbital flight. So, you know, we don't go into orbit. And secondly, we have a spaceship that goes up to 50,000 feet before it ignites as a rocket. Okay. So that's a lot easier on the body. So, you know, we didn't have pressured suits. We didn't have any, you know, oxygen or like any helmets. Yeah. Like normal environment.
And when you reached space and you were there for about 3 minutes or whatever time that you mentioned, is it the same feeling that we see in the movies, like people floating around and, you know, just bouncing and, you know, no fear, no feeling? Is it the same?
That's how it's supposed to be, yes. Yeah. Yes, because you're in zero gravity, so, you know, once you leave your seat, you float, so you have to hold on to stuff, otherwise you'll just keep drifting. So yeah, that was something that everyone looks forward to.
But you just mentioned that you were carrying oxygen tanks and all?
No, we weren't.
Nothing. So how in space there's no like, how do you breathe and like how?
No, because the cabin is like, you know, our spaceship is
pressurized.
Like, yeah, it's totally like normal, like sitting in this room.
Okay.
Yes,
so so you get the feel of space while being in space, but not that much physically enduring.
Like I said, it's easier on the body. Okay. Because it takes off from 50,000 feet as a rocket.
Okay. And that must have been an enjoyable ride, I'm sure.
It was, and that was the hard part, because when we ignited, the rocket motor boost happened, and we, you know, shot into space, we experienced 3.5 Gs, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it depends on how you endure those Gs. So if it's like, you know, pushing you down from here, down to your seat, if you're in a reclined position, it's a lot easier. But we were actually sitting, so those G forces were from like my head to toe, and they were very difficult.
Oh my God.
And even though they were only 10 to 15 seconds, I thought that it was forever. Because I felt that, you know, I was like 3.5 times my body weight, and that weight was like pushing me down from my head to my toes. So I also felt like my cheeks would like sort of fall down to my feet. They were being pulled with such force. Yeah. And I've seen the footage, you know, it shows the stress was showing on the faces of everyone on that spaceship.
Going by your profile, Namira, you know, it appears that you are into adventure sports big time. So this North Pole and South Pole expedition, how did you land up at the North Pole? You know, we just hear about it and we see it in the movies. How did you land up?
Well, actually, because, you know, when I was introduced to the media as the first Pakistani astronaut, I thought I would go to space in 2008, you know, like 2 years later.
Yeah,
but
that was
every year the company said that, oh no, it's going to be next year. So, you know, I was a bit afraid. I thought maybe I would get negative press if I don't go to space. So I said, oh well, maybe I can go to the farthest ends of the planet and, you know, set records again as the first Pakistani at the North and South Poles.
not just the first female, but actually I was
First
the first
Pakistani.
Pakistani. Also, I was the first Asian and first Pakistani to skydive tandem over Mount Everest. So it was just my way of exploring the farthest ends of the planet before breaking the orbit. And when I found that I would be the first Pakistani at the 3 poles, I was very excited to set those records.
Pretty unique, huh?
Yes, yes.
How did you think? But just like that, or would some friend recommended that? Okay, why don't you go to North Pole, or why don't you jump off Mount Everest? These are pretty unique things.
Well, I heard stories about others that inspired me, and also like when I went to the North Pole, I was appointed as the honorary ambassador. So before I went to the North Pole, I was introduced to the country by the Ministry of Tourism as an honorary ambassador of tourism.
Yes, honorary ambassador of tourism.
Yes,
Okay.
so I thought that they didn't assign me anything, so I was inspired to go to the North Pole. I thought I could go there and talk about our northern areas also. So I did that.
So how was that experience of North Pole? How was it like in physical in actual?
It was easier than the South Pole. It was shorter, much shorter, because the North Pole is a moving, cap of ice, and it's going to break and finish very soon due to climate change. So, if you want to go to the North Pole, do it quickly
before it melts.
It melts completely. So, I stayed in ice camp only for one night, and then we flew in a helicopter to the North Pole. And my thing was to raise a peace flag because, in those days, our image was suffering quite a bit. So I basically went to all these poles to raise a peace flag.
So basically, space diplomacy, tourism diplomacy, promoting culture via tourism, via your space expeditions. That seems to be one of your mottos, yeah?
I've been a global ambassador for Pakistan.
And for peace.
Yes, and for peace. And peace, yes, space diplomacy through my non-profit Space Trust.
Amazing. We're going to talk about that trust in a minute. Okay, so South Pole and North Pole were good, you enjoyed it, and then you decided that this is not enough. I want to jump off Mount Everest also.
Well, that was something that people at the South Pole decided for me.
Oh, okay.
Adventurers, global adventurers who were there to climb the highest mountain in Antarctica.
Okay.
So when they saw a Pakistani there, they were quite shocked. And South Pole was a lot harder.
Okay.
I stayed in an ice camp for like 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yeah. And Antarctica is the coldest, windiest, driest planet on Earth. And it was almost like being on a different planet.
Okay.
And there were these snowstorms, whiteouts. We were stuck in the ice camp for 2-3 weeks.
No electricity, no nothing?
No, nothing. And I had like just a camp, like a tent in the middle of the ice. But the fun thing was that I met the most amazing people there because there was a dining tent which was our social hangout. So I met adventurers from all over the world and mountaineers because they had come to climb the highest summit in Antarctica. So when they saw me, they were like, wow, so you've been to the North Pole, South Pole, you're going to space, so now you should climb Everest because that is the 3rd pole of the world. So I said, okay, so I was inspired to climb Everest. But just as I started training or thinking of doing it and doing the smaller summits, one of my friends from the Virgin Galactic Founder Astronaut Club told me that we are going to have the first ever historic Everest skydive. In history, in Nepal in 2008 also. Okay. And he was going to skydive from there. So I was like, what? I think it's going to be so much easier to skydive over Mount Everest than to climb it. So, and it's different, and it's the first time it's happening in history, and I'll be the first Pakistani, and then I ended up being the first Asian also to do it. So, I was like, let me do that instead.
It takes a lot of guts to...
It did, because it was the toughest expedition. It was the best in terms of the beauty of Nepal and the trekking that I did. I went up like, few thousand feet up and down the Himalayas before I did it. Trekking was optional, but I just did it because it's such a beautiful environment. And it was also to, acclimatize and get used to it. So eventually, the jump program was delayed by 3 weeks because it was a late monsoon. And it was the first time that this guy organized it, in the history of the world. So he underestimated the monsoon season.
The weather conditions.
So it was very challenging because before my dive, there was a plane crash and 17 people died in that, all Swiss jumpers. And then before my skydive, one of our fellow jumpers crashed in the rocks. And she broke all the bones, all her bones.
That's what I was about to ask you. Was it safe? Was it a safe option?
It was the most risky one.
Most risky one?
Probably, yes. I mean, besides my space flight, of course.
Of course, of course.
So my mother used to get so angry at that time. She used to call me every morning, and I didn't tell her about the crash, but she used to read the newspaper every morning, like all the pages. So the next day it was headlines that this plane crashed in the Himalayas and killed 17 Swiss jumpers. And she was like, what the hell are you doing? You have to come back. You can't do this. And I'm like, no way. I have to do what I have to do.
I have to do what
I will not go in the reverse gear,
Okay.
This is my
dream, my life.
No, it wasn't my dream. It was something I set to conquer, and I had to conquer it. It was the third pole, and I did it. So the best thing is that I believed in it. I believed in all my dreams, I guess.
Yeah.
And I was just lucky, I think, because the day I went skydiving, it was the last lift of the program. I was the last person to do the dive tandem with my instructor, and we had the most beautiful sky, not a single cloud. And also, the best joke is that I was free falling. First, I had to open the door of the plane myself because there were two teams.
Okay.
I was the one next to the door, so I opened the door of the plane myself.
Okay.
I had to take the plunge first.
First plunge, okay.
I took the jump.
And yourself, no one pushed you?
No, I mean, I was with the instructor, but I had to jump first. He was behind me. So when I jumped, for a few seconds, the drag parachute was not open. So obviously I was falling like at the speed of light.
And you could think and you could see that it's not opening.
No. It takes a while for it to open.
Okay.
The drag parachute, which kind of controls your descent and your free fall.
Yeah.
So before it opened, it was like jumping from that height and feeling the, free fall at a very high speed. So my God, my heart stopped. And then the drag parachute opened and I started feeling that I was actually suspended in thin air. But actually I was coming down at the speed of 153 miles per hour.
My God.
But I didn't feel it. So it was like my first experience feeling that as if I was in zero gravity.
In zero gravity. Just
floating.
A question which just like came to my mind. What if someone faints, like as soon as you start jumping, you're free falling, and as you said, you felt as if your heart stopped. What if someone faints?
Well, as long as they're with an instructor, they'll be safe. But if not, then they won't open their parachute. Then obviously
they're going to.
We don't know.
Yeah.
So my skydive was perfect. I mean, the sky was beautiful, the weather was nice, and I made the perfect landing. Because if you don't keep your legs in the right position, you can break your legs. So I landed in the right way. My instructor was very happy.
So you trained for it initially?
No, there was no training.
No training?
No training.
They didn't tell you that you have to do this. These are the do's and these are the don'ts.
No, what they did was before I went up, they gave me the waiver to sign, and all it said was that if
something
you die,
happens, not our responsibility.
And that really was bad because it was not the right time for that, especially after so many people died. So I'm like, why did you have to give me this waiver just before I'm going up? I could have done it like 3 days ago. And so that kind of spoiled my mood.
I think that's kind of a legal requirement they would have wanted, but they should have
fulfilled. They could have done it earlier, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, all is well that ends well, and it really ended beautifully.
I'm sure you made your parents proud, you made your country proud. We're going to take a short break, Namira, and once I come back, we're going to talk about the foundation that she has formed, and obviously then we're going to take a very, very inspirational message. Welcome back to Sky's the Limit. This is FAROOQ HASAN, and I'm in conversation with the one and only Namira Salim. Namira, you formed a trust, an organization, an NGO basically, Space Trust, is it?
Yes.
Would you like to tell us something about that briefly?
Yes, Space Trust is a product of my 17-year-long journey in the space industry.
Okay.
So in 2015, I founded this organization at a very high level in Monaco.
Okay.
It was a launch event with the government, and it was attended by the Prince of Monaco.
So it's a global NGO, or is it based only for?
It's British.
Okay, British. Okay.
But I'm doing a lot of global work in the space industry.
Okay.
So yes, so I founded it in 2015, and the inaugural event was in partnership with the Russian Space Agency. And I'd also invited the chairman of SUPARCO, and it was on that occasion that I made an official introduction between our space agency, SUPARCO, and the Russian space agency, Roscosmos.
Okay.
So I've played a humble role as a private citizen, even though I'm not an official astronaut from this country.
Yeah.
I also introduced SUPARCO to the biggest manufacturer of space systems from Europe, Thales Alenia Space.
Wow.
When I was Honorary Consul of Pakistan to Monaco in 2011 to 13.
Okay.
So Space Trust is a thought leader in the global space industry in promoting space as the new frontier for peace on Earth.
Okay.
And I'm known as a thought leader in space diplomacy, which is very unique. And I'm promoting space diplomacy in a very different way that to world leaders and governments over the years. And I've held very high-level events at the Capitol Hill with a congressman who became the NASA administrator during the Trump administration.
Okay.
Then I've held 2 very high-level events at the UN General Assembly High-Level Week when all the world leaders are there in partnership with the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs, UN Office for Partnerships. And at the moment, I'm working, I've already been to space, but I'm working on the maiden mission to space for my Space Trust, for my non-profit. So we are building So we are building a satellite which will be built by students between the US and a developing country of Nairobi. And it's going to carry peace messages to space in the voices of world leaders.
Awesome. Very nice.
Yes.
So, Namira, I feel we need a lot more of Namiras in Pakistan. Is your trust or you yourself in your individual capacity doing anything to inspire young girls, students, Pakistani students to become Namira?
Of course, I've been coming here for the last 1 year because I knew that my space flight was close, and I've met with a lot of people, but nothing has come out of it, you know. I cannot do everything on my own, even though I'm known as the one-woman machinery in the space industry. And you know, the UN signed an MOU with my non-profit, which is just run by me. I'm like the only person. I was funding it myself over the years. I've never received any funding from anyone. So if the government will fund me and support me, of course, I can bring, you know, STEM education projects, satellite development projects in Pakistan, engage the youth. They can develop a project to maybe, you know, monitor the climate and mitigate disasters in Pakistan. You know, that's my dream.
That's absolutely what we need also.
Yes, and we need the support of the government. I need funding.
And you can act as the bridge because you have the right contacts. Amazing, Namira. Unfortunately, we are short on time, but you know, there's so much to talk about. Before we sign off, I would like you to give a very, very special message to all the Pakistanis who are watching you right now, especially the youngsters, you know, who see themselves in you, because you made Pakistan so much proud.
Right. So I think that everybody has a dream, everybody has their own story, and we should take those dreams beyond the skies, because sky is not the limit.
Sky is not the limit.
And we should light the stars with our own special story, so that our own special story becomes our legend.
Wow.
And so that legend carries on and makes its place in history, and our legend lives beyond us for generations to be inspired by that. So another thing I want to tell the youth is that I have a singing talent.
Wow.
And I created a song called Follow Me to the Moon. I wrote it, I co-composed it. And it will educate, it does educate the audiences about the new space age and how space is the new frontier for peace on Earth. It's an amazing melody, and I've actually taken real sounds from NASA, space sounds.
Okay.
And it's an amazing composition. So anyone who wants to get inspired to, you know, reach the highest stars should listen to Follow Me to the Moon.
And it's a good melody also, you said.
Yes.
Okay, definitely I'm sure the audience will go and click on that link. Absolutely, truly inspiring and amazing. Namira, you make us so much proud. You know, I don't have words to express gratitude. You've already been awarded Tamgha Imtiyaz, but I am sure that's not commensurate to what you've contributed and what you are willing to contribute. And I'm sure the government of Pakistan will recognize and acknowledge your efforts. We are all very, very proud of you. And one thing that I must say that I learned, or what I picked from all the conversation that I've had with Namira, is that you need to believe in yourself. If you believe in yourself, you can achieve anything. Could you ever imagine a young Pakistani girl dreaming of going into space and then actually making it happen? Going to the North Pole, going to the South Pole, jumping off Mount Everest, being an artist, sculptor, you know, so many things. So there's no end. You can do whatever you want. You got to think about it, dream big. Thank you very much once again, Namira. Inshallah ta'ala, I will see you in another episode of Sky is the Limit. Till then, Allah Hafiz.